trouble, but I tell you right now, y'all long live cowgirls.
Since we're all patiently awaiting the upcoming NFL draft for 2025, I started wondering about how the draft actually works. So in this video, I'll be giving a little background info about the history of the NFL draft and then going into the actual process itself and what all happens after we see the players drafted at the event. Thanks for checking out my channel Tech and Shoes TV. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. The NFL Draft, officially known as the Annual Player Selection Meeting, is an annual event which serves as the most common source of player recruitment in the National Football League. Each team is given a position in the drafting order in reverse order relative to its record in the previous year, which means that the last-place team is positioned first and the Super Bowl champion is last. From this position, the team can either select a player or trade its position to another team for other draft positions, a player or players, or any combination thereof. The round is complete when each team has either selected a player or traded its position in the draft. The first draft was held in 1936 and has been held every year since. Certain aspects of the draft, including team positioning and the number of rounds in the draft, have been revised since its creation, but the fundamental method has remained the same. Currently, the draft consists of 7 rounds. The original rationale in creating the draft was to increase the competitive parity between the teams, as the worst team would, ideally, be able to choose the best player available. In the early years of the draft, players were chosen based on hearsay, print media, or other rudimentary evidence of ability. In the 1940s, some franchises began employing full-time scouts. The ensuing success of these teams eventually forced the other franchises to also hire scouts. Colloquially, the name of the draft each year takes on the form of the NFL season in which players picked could begin playing. For example, the 2010 NFL Draft was for the 2010 NFL season. However, the NFL-defined name of the process has changed since its inception. The location of the draft has continually changed over the years to accommodate more fans, as the event has gained popularity. The draft's popularity now garners prime-time television coverage. In the league's early years, from the mid-1930s to the mid-1960s, the draft was held in various cities with NFL franchises until the league settled on New York City starting in 1965, where it remained for 50 years until 2015, when future draft locations started being determined through a yearly bidding process. History. League Commissioner Roger Goodell announcing a team's selection at the 2010 NFL Draft. In the early 1930s, Stan Koska had an excellent college career as a University of Minnesota running back, leading the Minnesota Gophers to an undefeated season in 1934. Every NFL team wanted to sign him. Koska took advantage of the lack of a draft and held out for the highest possible offer. While a free agent, he even ran for mayor of Inver Grove Heights, Minnesota. Although his political career did not take off, Koska's 9-month NFL holdout succeeded, and he became the league's highest-paid player, signing a $5,000 contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers on August 25, 1935. As a response to the bidding war for Stan Koska, the NFL instituted the draft in 1936. In late 1934, Art Rooney, owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, gave the right of usage of 2 players to the New York Giants because Rooney's team had no chance to participate in the postseason. After the owner of the Boston Redskins, George Preston Marshall, protested the transaction, the president of the NFL, Joe F. Carr, disallowed the Giants the ability to employ the players. At a league meeting in December 1934, the NFL introduced a waiver rule to prevent such transactions. Any player released by a team during the season would be able to be claimed by other teams. The selection order to claim the player would be in inverse order to the team's standings at the time. Throughout this time, Bert Bell, co-owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, felt his team's lack of competitiveness on the field made it difficult for the Eagles to sell tickets and to be profitable. Compounding the Eagles' problems were players signed with teams that offered the most money, or if the money being equal, players chose to sign with the most prestigious teams at the time, who had established a winning tradition. As a result, the NFL was dominated by the Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, Giants, and Redskins. Bell's inability to sign a desired prospect, Stan Koska, in 1935, eventually led Bell to believe the only way for the NFL to have enduring success was for all teams to have an equal opportunity to sign eligible players. At a league meeting on May 18, 1935, Bell proposed a draft be instituted to enhance the possibility of competitive parity on the field in order to ensure the financial viability of all franchises. His proposal was adopted unanimously that day, although the first draft would not occur until the next offseason. The rules for the selection of the players in the first draft were, first, that a list of college seniors would be assembled by each franchise and submitted into a pool. From this pool, each franchise would select, in inverse order to their team's record in the previous year, a player. With this selection, the franchise had the unilateral right to negotiate a contract with that player, or the ability to trade that player to another team for a player or players. If, for any reason, the franchise was unsuccessful in negotiating a contract with the player and was unable to trade the player, the president of the NFL could attempt to arbitrate a settlement between the player and the franchise. If the president was unable to settle the dispute, then the player would be placed in the reserve list of the franchise and would be unavailable to play for any team in the NFL that year. In the 1935 NFL season, the Eagles finished in last place at 2-9, thus securing themselves the first pick in the draft. The first NFL draft began at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Philadelphia on February 8, 1936. 90 names were written on a blackboard in the meeting room from which the teams would choose. As no team had a scouting department, the list was created from either print media sources, visits to local colleges by team executives, or by recommendations to team executives. The draft would last for 9 rounds, and it had no media coverage. The first player ever selected in the draft was Jay Berwanger. Bell, prior to the draft, was not successfully able to negotiate a contract with Berwanger, so Bell traded him to the Bears. George Halas, owner of the Bears, was also unsuccessful in signing Berwanger. Berwanger's decision to not play in the NFL was not unusual, as only 24 of the 81 players selected chose to play in the NFL that year. The draft was recessed on the first day and it was continued and finished on the next day. This draft saw the emergence of Wellington Mara as a savant, as he had been subscribing to magazines and local and out-of-town papers to build up dossiers of college players across the country, which resulted in the Giants drafting of Tuffy Lemons. As a result of the institution of the draft, Tim Mara, owner of the Giants, reduced Ken Strong's salary offer to $3,200 from $6,000 a year for 1936 because Mara felt the draft would alter the salary structure of the NFL. 39 Generally, the franchise's exclusivity in negotiating with draft picks produced the immediate effect of, depending on sources, stopping the escalating salaries of new players or reducing their salaries. Consequently, contemporary critics charged it was anti-labor. Early drafts, 1937 to 1946. Art Rooney, owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, chose Byron Whizzer White in the first round of the 1938 draft despite White's known public declaration that he would not play professional football and would instead begin work on his Rhodes Scholarship. White did, however, agree to play for the 1938 season after Rooney publicly gave him a guaranteed contract of $15,000. Double what any other player had ever made in the NFL. The size of the dollar amount brought condemnation from other owners because it altered the pay expectations of college draftees. For the 1939 draft, Wellington, for the first time, was put in charge of drafting players for the Giants. He submitted the list of players into the pool that the Giants or other franchises could choose players from. However, in the first round he selected a player, Walt Nielsen, not on the list of players that the Giants or any other franchise had submitted. With a grin, Wellington stated, "I didn't think I said I put every name on that list." In 1939, Kenny Washington was, to no small extent, viewed as one of the greatest college football players of all time. After information was made available to at least one owner of a franchise that Washington was African American, he was not drafted by any team for the 1940 NFL draft. The draft would be eventually codified into the NFL Constitution, although no information is available on when that originally occurred. Bullet Bill Dudley was the first overall pick in the 1942 draft, and he would eventually become the first player picked first overall in the draft to enter the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Scouting era begins, 1946 to 1959. Eddie Codell became the first player scout in 1946 when he was hired by Dan Reeves of the Los Angeles Rams. The NFL's competition with the All-America Football Conference, AAFC, in 1947 resulted in a temporary institution of a bonus pick. Under this system, the first overall selection was awarded as a bonus pick by a random draw, while the last-place team picked second, and so on. The team that won this draft lottery then forfeited its selection in the final round of the draft. The winner was then also eliminated from the draw in future years. By 1958, all 12 clubs in the league at the time had received a bonus choice, and this system was abolished. Competitive parity did not, however, quickly arrive in the NFL as perennial losers, such as the Eagles and Chicago Cardinals. Standings did not improve until 1947. In the 1949 NFL Draft, George Taliaferro became the first African-American selected when he was chosen in the 13th round. He, however, chose to sign with an AAFC team. Wally Triplett was chosen in the 19th, and he would be the first African-American to be selected in the draft and make an NFL team. After the draft and prior to the start of the season, Paul "Tank" Younger was signed by the Los Angeles Rams as a free agent and became the first NFL player from an historically black college. Eddie Robinson, Younger's coach at Grambling, promptly and unequivocally impressed upon him that the future of the recruitment and drafting of his colleagues at other black colleges lay in the balance based on his success with the Rams. Technology, 1960 to 1979. The 1960 NFL Draft marked a turning point in the draft's history because of the pending arrival of the American Football League, AFL, as it became a high-stakes, competitive affair. In 1976, former NFL wide receiver Paul Salata first coined the moniker Mr. Irrelevant to refer to the last overall player selected in the draft. ESPN and the Digital Age, 1980 to 2017. In 1980, Chet Simmons, president of the year-old ESPN, asked Pete Rozelle if the fledgling network could broadcast coverage of the draft live on ESPN. Although Rozelle did not believe it would be entertaining television, he agreed. In 1988, the NFL moved the draft from weekdays to the weekend, and ESPN's ratings of the coverage improved dramatically. In 2006, ESPN received competition when the NFL Network, which had launched in October 2003, began to produce its own draft coverage. ESPN pays the NFL a rights fee for the non-exclusive rights to draft coverage, a fee that is included in its overall contract to televise games. ESPN Sunday Night NFL from 1987 to 2005, and Monday Night Football from 2006 to the present. 61. In 2010, the NFL moved to a 3-day draft with the first day encompassing the first round beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time Thursday, the second day encompassing the second and third rounds beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time Friday, and third day concluding the process with the final 4 rounds beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time Saturday. Fox, NFL Network, ESPN, and ABC 2018. 2018 was the first time ever that the draft was carried on broadcast television. As a prelude to their new Thursday night football contract, Fox and NFL Network simulcast the first 2 nights of the draft, with both nights featuring personnel from both NFL Network and Fox. ESPN continued to produce its own coverage of the draft, with ESPN2 simulcasting days 1 and 2, and ABC simulcasting day 3. NFL Network's main set featured the crew of host Rich Eisen, Daniel Jeremiah, draft expert Mike Mayock, and Stanford head coach David Shaw, with Steve Mariucci, Steve Smith Sr., and Fox NFL lead analyst Troy Aikman joining from an outside set for day 1. Other analysts included Fox college football lead analyst Joel Klatt, Charles Davis, and Deion Sanders. NFL Network, ABC, and ESPN, 2019-present. The Fox/NFL Network simulcast would only last 1 year, as ABC picked up the broadcast television rights for all 3 days of the draft in 2019. ABC's coverage would have the College Game Day crew on days 1 and 2, with Good Morning America anchor Robin Roberts, joined by 2018 NFL MVP and Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, and Grammy Award winner Taylor Swift, co-hosting with Game Day host Rhys Davis on day 1. Also, on day 1, Swift announced her new single Me, featuring Panic, at the Disco's Brendan Urie, being released at midnight ET, with the music video debuting on YouTube at the same time. Day 3 featured the ESPN crew of Trey Wingo, NFL insiders Louis Riddick, and draft experts Todd McShay and Mel Kiper Jr., hosting ABC's coverage, which was a simulcast of ESPN's coverage. For the 2020 NFL Draft, which was supposed to be in Las Vegas but was moved to a virtual format due to the COVID-19 pandemic, NFL Network decided to simulcast ESPN's coverage of all 3 days. Personalities from NFL Network like draft guru Daniel Jeremiah, Hall of Fame QB Kurt Warner, and Hall of Fame WR Michael Irvin joined ESPN personnel on all 3 days. ABC continued to carry a feed with the College Game Day crew for the first 2 days of the draft. Majority of the analysts joined remotely from their homes, with Trey Wingo, Reese Davis, Jesse Palmer, and Maria Taylor working from ESPN's Bristol, Connecticut studios. Todd McShay was to also participate in the draft, but was unable to due to him testing positive for COVID. 2021 saw a return to normal as after a 1-year hiatus, NFL Network returned to producing their own coverage of the draft. ESPN and ABC continued to carry separate feeds, one with all the X's and O's on ESPN, and the other with the College Game Day crew on ABC. After Wingo left ESPN in 2020, Mike Greenberg, host of Get Up, took over as ESPN's host for the first 2 nights, while Davis, who continued as ABC's host, hosted ESPN's coverage of Day 3, which was also simulcast on ABC. 2022 saw the draft head to Las Vegas after a 2-year wait. NFL Network saw no personnel changes, but ESPN and ABC took a few hits. ESPN announced that insider Adam Schefter would miss the draft to attend his son's college graduation, and Mel Kiper Jr. would participate virtually because of his COVID-19 vaccination status. Kirk Herbstreit, meanwhile, announced himself that he would be dropping out of ABC's draft coverage due to blood clots. Now that we know a little about the history of the NFL, I'll tell you what the process is like in 2025. Assigning draft picks. Currently, each of the 32 clubs receives 1 pick in each of the 7 rounds of the NFL Draft. The number of teams drafting has changed over time, and there have been as many as 30 rounds in a single draft. The order of selection is determined by the reverse order of finish in the previous season. Barring any trades between clubs, each round starts with the team that finished with the worst record and ends with the Super Bowl champions. Teams that didn't qualify for the playoffs are assigned draft slots 1 to 20. The order is determined by the standings at the end of the regular season. The club with the worst record will pick first, and the one with the best record will pick 20th. Teams that did qualify for the playoffs are assigned draft slots 21 to 32. The order is determined by the results of the previous year's postseason play. The 4 teams eliminated in the wild card round pick in slots 21 to 24 in the reverse order of their final regular season records. The 4 teams eliminated in the divisional round pick in slots 25 to 28 in the reverse order of their final regular season records. The 2 teams that lost in the conference championships pick in the 29th and 30th spots in the reverse order of their final regular season records. The team that lost the Super Bowl has the 31st pick in the draft. The Super Bowl champion has the 32nd and final spot in each round. In situations where teams finished the previous season with identical records, the determination of draft position is decided by strength of schedule, the aggregate winning percentage of a team's opponents. The team that played the schedule with the lowest winning percentage will be awarded the higher pick. If the teams have the same strength of schedule, division or conference tiebreakers are applied. If the divisional or conference tiebreakers are not applicable, or ties still exist between teams of different conferences, ties will be broken the following tie-breaking method. Head-to-head, if applicable. Best won-loss tied percentage in common games, minimum of 4. Strength of victory in all games. Best combined ranking among all teams in points scored and points allowed in all games. Best net points in all games. Best net touchdowns in all games. Coin toss, compensatory picks. The New Orleans Saints and #XA0 selected Marquez Colston with a compensatory pick in the 7th round of the 2006 NFL Draft. AP Photo/Jonathan Bachman and #XA and #XA0. The New Orleans Saints selected Marquez Colston with a compensatory pick in the 7th round of the 2006 NFL Draft. AP Photo/Jonathan Bachman. Under the terms of the NFL's collective bargaining agreement, The league also can assign as many as 32 additional compensatory free agent picks, which allow clubs that have lost free agents to another team to use the draft to try to fill the void. The awarded picks take place at the end of the 3rd through 7th round. Compensatory free agents are determined by a proprietary formula developed by the NFL Management Council, which considers a player's salary, playing time, and postseason honors. The value of the compensatory free agents gained or lost by each team is totaled, and a team is awarded picks of equal value to the net loss of compensatory free agents, up to a maximum of 4. Draft rules and process. NFL draft representatives sit at team tables during the NFL draft. Draft rules and process. Expand. The NFL draft takes place over 3 days, Thursday through Saturday, each spring. Only the first round is held on Thursday. It starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and each team has 10 minutes to make its pick. The second and third rounds are on Friday. Rounds 4 to 7 are on Saturday. Teams get 7 minutes to make picks in the second round, 5 minutes for regular or compensatory picks in rounds 3 to 6 and 4 minutes in round 7. If a team lets its time expire without making a choice, it can make a selection later, but it runs the risk of letting the next team on the clock take the player it was considering. Every team has a table set up at the draft venue, where team representatives stay in constant contact with executives at each club's headquarters. When a team decides on a selection, it communicates the player's name from its draft room to its representatives at Selection Square. The team representative then writes the player's name, position, and school on a card and submits it to an NFL staff member known as a runner. When the runner gets the card, the selection is official, and the draft clock is reset for the next pick. A second runner goes to the representatives of the team up next and lets them know who was chosen. Upon receiving the card, the first runner immediately radios the selection to an NFL player personnel representative, who inputs the player's name into a database that notifies all clubs of the pick. The runner also walks the card to the head table, where it's given to Ken Fiore, Vice President of Player Personnel. Fiore reviews the name for accuracy and records the pick. He then shares the name with the NFL's broadcast partners, the commissioner, and other league or team representatives, so they can announce the pick. Trades. The Kansas City Chiefs traded a total of 3 draft picks in 2017 to the Buffalo Bills to get Patrick Mahomes II, a 2x Super Bowl MVP. AP photo/Suzanne Plunkett. The Kansas City Chiefs traded a total of 3 draft picks in 2017 to the Buffalo Bills to get Patrick Mahomes II, a 2x Super Bowl MVP. AP photo/Suzanne Plunkett. Once teams are assigned their draft positions, each pick is an asset. It's up to the club's executives to either select a player or trade the pick to another team to improve its position in the current or future drafts. Teams may negotiate trades at any time before and during the draft and can swap draft picks or current NFL players to whom they hold the rights. When teams agree to a trade during the draft, both clubs call the head table, where Fiore and staff monitor the league's phones. Each team must relay the same trade information to the league to have a trade approved. Once a trade is approved, a player personnel representative gives the details to the league's broadcast partners and to all 32 clubs. A league official announces the trade in the draft venue for media and fans. Player eligibility. To be eligible for the draft, players must have been out of high school for at least 3 years and must have used up their college eligibility before the start of the next college football season. Underclassmen and players who have graduated before using all their college eligibility may request the league's approval to enter the draft early. Players are draft eligible only in the year after the end of their college eligibility. Before the draft, NFL player personnel staff members confirm the eligibility of draft prospects. That means researching the college backgrounds of approximately 3,000 college players each year. They work with NCAA compliance departments at schools across the country to verify the information for all prospects. They also check the rosters of college all-star games to make sure that only draft-eligible players play in the games. The player personnel staff also review all of the applications submitted by players who want to enter the draft early. Underclassmen have until 7 days following the NCAA National Championship game to declare their intentions to do so. For the 2017 NFL Draft, 106 undergraduates received NFL approval to enter the draft. as did 13 players who graduated without using up all their college eligibility. Once players have become draft eligible or have declared their intention to enter the draft early, the player personnel staff work with teams, agents, and schools to clarify the player's status. They also work with agents, schools, scouts, and teams to enforce league rules for pro days, where NFL scouts come to colleges to observe prospects, and private workouts. During the draft, player personnel staff confirm that all players who are drafted are draft eligible. And that's the history and process of the NFL draft. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.
Trouble, but I tell you right now, y'all don't live